mute the. I'm going to mute those because I don't know what we're talking about there. I mean, I do, but not like Paul does. So, what's that? Oh, we're live. How about that? My mom is going to be so confused. Welcome everybody for our March 2020 Town Hall meeting. For those of you watching online, there's a whole bunch of people and they're all sitting on that side of the room and Ruben's over here, so we're not sure what that's about. So nobody wants to sit by the HR guy. Quick update. We have 3 topics today. Quick update on coronavirus. We're going to have a conversation about the planning retreat, and then Rick Rancis and Dr. Curry will talk about what's going on with the Diggy Club and our formerly incarcerated students program. So I think that'll be a good conversation. We'll do short on the coronavirus. We sent out a rather lengthy email yesterday that talked about some of the things we're doing. We've had several meetings on campus already with key stakeholders. All the constituent groups have been alerted and have participated in those conversations. We'll start meeting again next week. Right now, our process is that our police department, Kathy Farley and Sergeant Reed, are our liaisons to the county, and they're in constant communication with the county. As of today, we still have no cases reported here or in San Luis County, but I'm pretty sure that's going to change. So we're going to see that. We haven't restricted any travel. We are just asking people to use the best practices that you would use, for the flu. That's kind of the old H1N1 response when we were really diligent about that. So we've invented a game, the Don't Touch Your Face game. Sean Abel just lost. So it's really hard to do that. So anyway, with that, we'll turn the process over. There is a website. I forgot. There's a website right off the homepage. When you go to the homepage, scroll down a little bit, you'll see there's constant updates there. We're going to use the Rave system, and we're going to use our other tools to make sure everybody's communicating as much as possible. Get your hand sanitizer. We got like these. There's some over in student services. Don't tell. So go talk to Stephanie Robb. She has some of these that you can grab if you don't have any for yourself. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Paul Murphy, who's going to talk a little about the planning retreat, which was fantastic. Quinn and Paul. And I want to thank you and your team. Erica's here, and you guys did a great job of it. It was an absolutely great retreat with a lot of good information, a lot of good stuff that was covered. So Dom's not coming? Come on, Dom. All right. I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Good luck.
Okay, so there are some people here that attended the planning retreat, so I may ask for input from the audience at a certain point. I'm not all that entertaining for the entire duration of this topic. And I was commenting earlier, we really do need a band over here, and somebody like Ed McMahon to, here's Mike. I noticed you're not.
Well, I
thought after the previous topic. I do have an allergy cough, so no, don't get too excited. All right, so we're supposed to be talking about the planning retreat, and I do want to put in a promotional plug initially. We have a new newsletter out, newly designed. Janet McGee redesigned the whole thing. Kudos to her. So it's called Data Sizzle. And we're keeping our main theme, data is the new bacon. And I know you think because data is plural, it should be R, but it just doesn't sound right. Anyway, we have a little blurb on the backside about the planning retreat if you want to read up about it. And there's a link at the bottom to SharePoint where you can look at the materials as if you were actually at the event.
Won't be as good.
It won't be as good, no. If you're invited next year, I highly encourage your attendance. There's nothing better. So what was the purpose of the planning retreat?
Us, them.
What do we think?
So I was involved in the conversation for a long time. We have been working, as most people should know, we're working on the educational master plan and trying to find ways to involve the college community in that conversation of what that should look like and we have, I think currently we have a strategic plan, we have an Ed Master Plan. We've been talking about combining those two documents into one, and also making it a document that's really a living document and not a 70-page monstrosity that nobody's going to take a look at once we finish writing it. So those are kind of our general guidelines toward developing this process. So we decided to hijack this annual meeting to talk primarily about that. So that was the focus of the meeting.
Right. So the Ed Master Plan and Strategic Plan are expiring at the end of this year. I don't know if documents expire, but we'll stick with it. And so obviously we need a new master plan, and we've done a lot of work to date in getting to this point. So this event was really one event in a number of steps to gather input into the plan. The last couple of planning retreats, we did a lot of activities like a SWOT analysis, strategies, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We worked on the vision for success goals. We developed some guiding principles and priorities that were vetted through our governance process and adopted at College Council. Those have been used for resource prioritization the last couple of years. So in 1819, we went through a process of reviewing sample master plans, Ed Master Plans. And then in spring 2019, we had a half-day session facilitated by Collaborative Brain Trust, where we talked about integrated planning and what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. And so that's where we developed the recommendation that we ought to combine the strategic plan and Ed Master Plan together in one document. It's really difficult for people to make use of these disparate plans when most people on a day-to-day basis aren't that familiar with them. And so it's really kind of a strategic educational master plan that we're focused on.
And since education is our primary activity here, that made sense as the master plan.
Right, absolutely. And we secured some funding through the assistance of the grants office. Leanne, thank you. We got the IEPI PRT funding to help pay for a labor market analysis and to bring in a consultant to help us. For those of you that participated in the fall all-staff day activity, we did a visioning exercise. We talked about what the college should look like going forward and what some of the internal and external challenges are for the college. So we've gathered that input. We developed IEC, Institutional Effectiveness Councils, kind of spearheading the oversight of this process. They looked at some sample plans at other colleges, came up with a framework, and worked with Al Solano, who's been helping us with our Guided Pathways initiative, to come up with the agenda for the planning retreat. And I really have to give kudos to Erica Bealey. She took over the design of the retreat and really made it quite successful. The framework of the retreat is, as you can see in the screen up there, completion by design. So it's worth taking a look at those steps, and we intuitively know what the student journey is, all of us having been through that, but it's worthy at times to kind of take a step back and think about these discrete points that students go through in their journey, and where we're successful in facilitating that transition and where we might be falling short and what we can do about it. And that's really the crux of what we did at the planning retreat. And Ben, as a counselor, I was wondering if you have any thoughts about this student journey. I mean, does this seem like a good model as a framework for thinking about planning?
Yeah. At the planning retreat, I thought it was really good, and especially the way that we're interacting with our students through the promise. Like Bulldog Bound serves as the connection. The entry happens through something going on in the classrooms right behind us right now. We have a Launch to College event happening with students, and then they are getting enrolled in those quote-unquote gatekeeper courses of math and English currently. And then, just continuing that relationship with us in the counseling department and with the instructional faculty on campus to get there. And, I was really part of the transition group at the end, and I'll speak to that more later, but yeah, I was really happy with the way that the groups came together, and it really kind of made sense. A lot of it dovetails into what we're doing with Guided Pathways anyways. So some of the things that came out of it we kind of already discussed, but now it's good to have a larger body in that room.
Right, and that's a good point. There is a strong similarity between the completion by design framework and guided pathways. In fact, the connection and entry kind of overlap with pillars 1 and pillar 2.
Mm-hmm.
We went with this model just to try to avoid any sort of confusion in terms of what we're
The
doing
activity
here
is,
within guided pathways. And this has a more discrete points along the way that we thought might be a little bit easier to model from a planning perspective. So the retreat, we invited 140 individuals and we had 75 attendees. So it takes a lot to get people to go to these, and I know Thursdays and Fridays are the best days that we can find people to round up, but it's a challenge. So if anybody has any ideas going forward on how to, we had good food. I hear that's how you get people to go to these things, but nevertheless.
I think people were scared that we were going to inundate them with more data, because the planning retreats are usually really data heavy and kind of a snooze. So we try to make it more interactive. We're trying to bring the data alive through, having staff and faculty talk about, the student experience, talk with each other, have lots of table time, because they get tired of hearing us talk all the time. We had a little bit of data. There was data there, but I think that this format, was engaging, and hopefully those that attended can agree that it was a more interactive session. And
Wasn't that much data.
yeah, we just a little bit, just
Just
enough.
And,
So-
and I would
So maybe
also-
you'll come next time if you're not scared with all the data.
Well, and the model, and I have to say thanks to everybody who submitted information about your areas and what you're doing. I know for some of you scrambled to get that done. But I think I heard from a lot of people that was the first time that they'd really seen the breadth of all the resources and services available to students in one document. And so I think that was a really good approach. And
Yeah, that was Al Solano's idea. We often jump into these types of events and say, well, what should we be doing? But we don't take a step back and say, what are we already doing?
Right.
And everybody's coming from a different perspective. And so I believe we had input from 56 areas, student service areas, academic areas, and then initiatives. So the first part of the retreat was an activity, a carousel, where people got to walk around and read posters about these different services, how many students were impacted, what the intended outcomes were. And then they went back to their tables and discussed how those activities and initiatives aligned with the student journey. And I wonder if anybody here or out in the audience learned anything that they didn't know already about any programs? Carrie?
Okay, so I learned a lot about a lot of the programs that are on campus. Me not being out on campus all the time and being, in my office, it was nice to see that. I was really interested to see that the SuccessNet and the intervention type programs are dependent upon the faculty submitting surveys about their students, and less than half of the faculty actually did that. And so my question is, how are we serving our students best if we can't get the information that we need about our students?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a lot of initiatives that take participation. It's not just the technology that is the solution, but the use of the technology.
So just to be clear, we had 52% of surveys returned, but only 49.7% of faculty responded to them.
That was one of them.
Yeah, I know.
Good data.
Good data. I put that part in.
All right.
So you know what was nice about me being there, being that I'm a student and I'm kind of like a student worker as well, is that I got to see and give input of the stuff that I get around from the other students here. I think maybe an idea would have maybe a few more students there, that maybe student workers or students that are here interacting with all the students daily.
Well, thank you, and I remember talking to you at the event, and I appreciate your participation. We do really extend an invitation to students through ASBG to participate on our councils
and at these events, and we sometimes really struggle to get them to attend. So it's not as if we don't try. And any ideas on how to get more? Again, I thought food would work, but
Well,
often does.
And one suggestion I know that we had was that we have all those posters that were made and displayed around the room, and several people had said, hey, those should be something that is maybe in the student center where students can pass by and see them, because it's really showing the amount of programs that we have, or maybe it's an ad campaign where we have featured student services, and then talk with students about them, like, did you know? But I think that's great. We would love to have more students involved and participating.
Absolutely.
So I got a question. I know that a lot of these retreats are driven by volunteering with the councils and committees and being on bargaining unit boards and things like that, but is it possible to open it up a little bit more than just specific people? Because there's some people that can't make it,
Right.
and there's some people that want to be involved, but in this part of it, but can't commit to the councils and committees.
Well, like I said, we had 140 invitations. That's well beyond the count of councils and committees. So we, after that first pass of invitations, we go to the constituency representatives and ask for more volunteers. We have people RSVP that didn't show up. So I think, 140 is a pretty good size invitation, but we can re-examine that and see if there's better ways of getting people there. Leanne?
I think Manuel had a really good point about how important it is to have the student voice there, and he had mentioned student workers, and this is more of an HR question, Ruben, but is it possible for those of us that have student workers to invite them, and if they're scheduled to normally work on those during those times, instead they could be at those at the strategic planning? Are we able to?
It would be up to the supervisor, I think, to, because in that capacity they're an employee. So hopefully,
we did have at least one student,
Yeah.
as you described, that was there during work time.
Okay.
So the first day ended after the carousel activity with a little bit of data sharing, and we covered the two challenges that affect community colleges nationally: enrollment declines, and student completion. And so we looked at some national data about community college enrollments, and nationally it's been on a downturn for the last couple of years. System-wide in California, enrollments are flat to declining. Some schools are showing an increase, but in the aggregate, it declined overall this past year. And for Allen Hancock, the one thing that we saw in terms of our enrollments in the fall and now in the spring, the only two areas we're seeing any enrollment increase are concurrent enrollment, that's the programs out at the high school, and students coming directly from the high school through the Promise program. Every other demographic group declined. And that kind of set the tone, I think, for some of the discussion in terms of how we could do a better job of drawing non-traditionally aged students, whether they're re-entry or in their mid-20s and didn't go to college for the first time. So I know there was some discussion at the tables about that. And then the second day we discussed loss and momentum points. And on the loss points, I wonder if anybody here or in the audience there had any aha moments about loss points or any good conversations at your tables. I have some notes from the event in case you.
What group were you in, Bill?
I was in the progress group.
So give us an example of a loss point for progress.
So a loss point might be, well, just life in general. Things can happen in a student's life, and we might not, we expect students to be students as faculty, and we don't always remember that they have lives, and that just because they're not in class or they're having trouble with their turning in homework, that it's not because they don't want to do it, it's because something else might be a challenge for them. And it'd be nice to know, because it's no longer up there on the screen, but all those points, we should all be hitting all those points, even if we're not directly working in each of those specific 5 areas.
Right, so in the notes that Erica transcribed from the event, life issues for progress, working, housing, food, childcare. We often say that students are, one flat tire from dropping out because of, the having to live month to month. We are doing a housing insecurity survey. We should have the results out shortly on that. Yeah, so some of the lost points that were identified. So, for example, in connection, students unprepared to pick a goal or a program of study, and I know, Ben, you probably see that quite directly. I mean, we do a lot, but where do students learn about careers and how academic programs align to careers? Lack of flexible or innovative scheduling. I know there's a lot of discussion going on, especially for scheduling for non-traditional students. The traditional 16 to 18 week semester just often doesn't fit the schedule for somebody who's in their 30s or 40s or 50s.
Yeah, it's a long time to commit.
It is. Lots of things happen. In the entry point, some of the lost points that we identified, students not aware of support services. And it's quite remarkable when you look at the scope of what we provide, but counselors and instructional faculty know how often students are surprised to find out that we do have services.
Well, and even as faculty and staff not knowing, if faculty aren't aware of services, they can't refer students to those services. So, it is a problem all around.
I think that was an important point from the first day, that we tried to summarize the things that we did, and the posters were 20, but not everything that we do. And the student at our table didn't know about something that I might consider is common knowledge among faculty and staff, and it would be really helpful for her to know. But not only that particular student, but general student awareness, so that if a student is having an issue, another student could be in their network and be aware, hey, there's this support program or service that you can access.
We don't always have systematic ways of conveying
Communicating
information about these resources to students. I mean, it's often on an as-needed basis. Oh, well, you can do this, but it's always the students who don't say anything, that are quietly struggling. They're not necessarily asking people for help. They're just, and they don't know where to find it. So we need to do better at communicating to those students.
So after that part of the retreat, we looked at lost points and momentum points. The momentum points are areas where we are successful in moving students along. Then came really the meat of the activity, which was identifying strategies and the intended outcomes. And so, for example, in the entry part of the student journey, one of the strategies that the groups identified was embed support services, library, peer tutors, counselors, and gateway courses with mandatory participation in orientations, enrollment, writing, math, and English. So that's a model that's becoming more prominent in community colleges, and I know there's some pilot activities. In fact, the librarians are planning on participating in an embedded library program. And we have seen research Erica did last fall 19, in the embedded counselors in English was very successful. The presence of having somebody there to keep the students on track, to use the services, go to the writing center, those sorts of things. First year experience program, that kind of gets at some of what you're talking about here, because you bring these students together and they can actually learn from each other if one student's accessing some services and shares it with somebody else. But so many of our students kind of drive in and leave, and they don't have that networking to learn from their peers. So I was just curious for those that were there at the event, were there what sorts of strategies did you talk about at your tables that you'd like to share? Man?
I know at the Connection, in the Connection team, we talked a lot about reaching out rather than expecting interested students to come and find out. Do more outreach to non-traditional students especially, and finding ways where we would also circumvent the frustration of trying to enroll alone, and how we would set up a network or a team. So just the act of reaching out in different ways, opening our doors in different ways, and once the doors open and they step in, being there to support them, and so we talked a lot about that, the support that's needed, especially for non-traditional, because right out in high school they get counseled and helped through their FAFSA and through their enrollment process. But once they're out of high school, it's hard to let those students know that we can support them through that process, and just talked about what that might look like. So.
Good. Carrie, did you have anything you wanted to share?
The thing that I was kind of interested in, it seems like we're really top heavy or beginning heavy. We have all of these things that we do for everybody at the very beginning, starting really early in elementary school. But as they're getting ready to graduate and transition out, there's not really a lot there. So I was at a different table than Ben, but we were both working on transitions, and it was kind of like, having a warm handoff, bringing them into the college, kind of helping them through, and then handing them off warmly to the workforce or a 4-year or wherever they're going to go. We were talking about like maybe building an alumni group so people can stay connected. Ben, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, one thing we talked about doing at my table too was maybe looking into the creation of some professional type certificates, professional degrees that would be accepted by the workforce locally. Things that students could get that they knew would count for something with certain jobs, and then making sure that those are sustainable, because I know some companies will come in, hey, can you develop this degree? Like for, I think the one that I was approached for, my dad works in irrigation, so Jascoli's approached him about it was weird. Can you do irrigation tech degree? We need 30 people in it. So, once you get those 30 people, we've done all this work to create a degree, and then what's the point in majoring anymore if you can't get a job locally? So, making sure we're creating these degrees that have staying power within the community and students can continue to do is really important. That's something we were looking at too.
So going along with that, we were also talking about trying to list like the top agencies locally that employ Hancock College students, or try to make sure that the employers around here know that we have these students coming out that have these abilities, and to look at them to make sure that we're still sustaining our community.
One of the strategies that was identified in the transition group kind of gets to the Guided Pathways Success Team initiative is more of a case management approach for our students. Because as it was mentioned, we do a lot. I mean, we looked at where services align to these different journey points, and it was very heavy on the entry point, but not so much on the exit point. But if you think about a case management approach where we're working with the student all the way through, including departure, I mean, we have a great transfer center, but how does that transition into the transfer center, planning for transfer, tie back to their first day here to get them ready for that, and thinking about what it takes to be successful in transferring, and that what are their odds of getting into certain four-year colleges versus other four-year colleges, and financial planning for that, not exhausting their financial aid before they get there by taking 6 years here and exhausting all your financial aid. Don, did you have any interesting conversations at your table about strategies?
Of course we had interesting conversations.
I know.
I'm trying to remember some good ones. But I think I just want to play off what you were just saying about following the students and mentoring them, whether that's in a formal mentorship program or an informal capacity, because we all need direction they all need a little push in the right direction or a little pull. And sometimes we get just focused on what we're doing and the material that we teach that we forget that the students are along a bigger journey. I'm fortunate because I see a lot of students in engineering who are, at the beginning and throughout their growth and when they transfer and after they transfer. But it's always good to remember that we were students once too. We were trying to find our way, and just to touch bases with students who might be having trouble, or confusion, or if you get one student to pass a class, we can raise our.
Good email.
That was just the math. If we could just get one more student to pass each of our classes, our success rates would go up 3%, which is not a lot, but it is a lot. So.
And we do have, the software in place. It's just we as a campus have to make the decisions to use it for that purpose. So, the SuccessNet/Starfish program can do this. And Carrie, thank you for bringing that up. So if you guys have any ideas on how we get more faculty involved with using it, let me know. If we have to give out T-shirts, or I don't know, can we do that, Ruben? Is that okay? Yeah, I don't know. I can't give out gift cards, right? Well, if you have ideas, let me know. But yeah, we can do it. It's just we got to make the decision to do it.
And not just alerting students that are struggling, but it's a platform in which we can incentivize through reinforcement of goal completion, and you're doing a great job. And so sometimes we get lost in thinking about the students that are struggling or they're failing, and we want to support those students too, but we want to make sure to encourage the students that are doing really well, and that SuccessNet can be used for that same platform. So a balance of both.
But even to augment the case management too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to mention something also. I think you mentioned that 79% of faculty filled that out, SuccessNet.
We had 52.7%.
52. I think that's actually pretty good.
That was my goal, was 50%. It's the first semester.
So I know it seems like a lot of people aren't, but not everybody could have made the training. So maybe with the percentage that hasn't done it yet, just reach out to those faculty, because I know I went to the training session, so for me it was fairly easy. I was involved from the beginning, and then you tell other faculty, hey, did you do it? Do you have any problems? I know how to do it. But some faculty may not have support like that. So, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you bring up two good points, Jody. One was when we were identifying strategies, we really wanted the tables to think beyond the services, the student support programs, but what role can instructional faculty play in the student journey? And recognizing their importance, because that's where students spend most of their time is in the classroom. And so we can't just rely on all the other support areas, to get the students through. And so professional development opportunities that are meaningful for faculty is really important. And making, not just doing one session of something, and it's, everybody's schedules are busy. So that came up as an observation that we need to have the useful professional development, but also help faculty see how important their role is in this in the student journey. And these sorts of things like SuccessNet can play a huge role in many ways. One of the things, and we also need to look at the data not only from the standpoint of where some of the challenges are, but where we're seeing successes. And one of the things that we have found in the data is that the time to degree for students earning the ADT, the Associate Degree of Transfer, is 1 year less than the traditional AA degree. And so I want to look at those areas that are working really well. What is it about that model that's getting students through? The typical community college student in California takes almost about 5 years to get a 2-year degree, and they rack up 90 units for a 60-unit degree. And so we're looking at those metrics, those more immediate metrics, to see where we're making improvements. And we actually are. We're seeing the units coming down. We're seeing more and more students completing transfer level math and English in their first year. So we're making a lot of headway just in the last couple of years. So the work that the faculty have done on revising the curriculum and integrating the support and instructional programs together has been very effective. And we have these great ADTs.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to look at what's working too and build off of that. That's part of what we wanted to do in this activity as well is if it's working over here, can we scale it up?
Right.
What does it take? What sorts of resources are necessary? I know we're probably running short on time. I don't know if anybody has any other observations or questions or yes?
It just one of the strategies that the Connection team came up with. It has a lot to do with tying a lot of these loose ends together. So reaching out to the non-traditional, making sure they understand their map of where they're going using guided pathways, and figuring out which way they want their trajectory to go when they get here. Was to have on our website, free to anybody and everybody in the community that is interested, or anyone that goes online, is to do a career assessment. Just go to the website and do a career assessment and see where you have like character traits or where you might want to go, and then that would connect ideally to guided pathways, which would say, hey, so this quick career assessment says you're interested in this particular pathway. These are the courses that we have within this amount of time. You can get these certificates and be eligible for these types of positions. So it was like, it's kind of part marketing, part outreach, part guided pathway and career assessing, and kind of connecting it all right there on something where they're just exploring.
Well, that's a perfect segue. This afternoon, we're actually meeting with a web developer on the initial stages of that work itself to integrate the career exploration and mapping of career opportunities to academic pathways. And hopefully when that project's done, it will tackle all the things that you bring up.
Yeah.
Next steps, IEC is going to be working on a draft of the master plan. Over the summer, we'll be scheduling a community event with the Northern Economic Alliance Group and the Wally Group to do a big community activity to get input there. We've engaged the services of an outside group to do a regional labor market analysis, in particular with a focus on older non-traditional students. In the fall, we hope to have a draft ready for review and feedback at College Council and Academic Senate. We'll take it through the shared governance process for approval there, and then ultimately to the board for approval sometime in the fall. We're also working on the mission statement revision. We've taken that to Academic Senate and College Council and gotten some really good feedback, and that process will continue for a while in conjunction with this, alongside with this.
Right.
So with that,
Right,
I guess we're done.
I think we'll transition.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay up here.
All right.
Thank you. And then about a program that they started and how it's connected to some of the work that Rick's doing. So come on up. I'll just stay here. If you guys want to introduce yourselves, I know that we didn't earlier because I think we assumed people knew who we were, but if you want to tell us who you are, not everybody's going to know.
My name is Chicho Goza. I'm a student worker, student here at Hancock College, formerly incarcerated, working with the Beyond Barrier program.
Yeah.
I'm Manuel Garcia, also formerly incarcerated, also working with the Beyond Barriers program.
Great.
Hello. I think a lot of people know me, but in case not, my name is Rick Grants. I'm an academic dean here, charged with managing our business, fine arts, and social behavioral sciences departments. In addition to that, for the last almost 12 years now, I have managed our federal prison programs. At our federal prison, we offer 3 degree programs. One, an associate degree in liberal studies, social sciences, and just recently psychology. In addition to that, we have a contract through the Department of Justice where we have a welding program at the federal prison that has become a model for prisons across the United States. And then we also offer 3 certificate programs there in the area of addiction studies. And because of those, my experience at the working with those programs, when recent grant opportunities came my way, I worked with Leanna McNulty, who is in the audience today, to develop a program called Beyond Barriers, Transitions to Life, College, and a Career. And as I was investigating the need for that program here on campus, because I became familiar with Cheech's work here, and about 4 years ago, he had organized a student club for formerly incarcerated students. And so the grants just tied right into what they had already been doing, but gave us a chance to really strengthen our efforts for this population. So one of our grants is through the California Chancellor's Office, Community College Chancellor's Office, and that grant's in the amount of about just a little over $113,000. But then we had an opportunity to apply for a grant to supplement that, and that grant is $347,000, and that grant's through the Bureau of State and Community Corrections. In this last round of applications, and in fact, we were the only community college in the state of California funded through their grant program, and the very first college to be funded through their program. They're real excited to be working with us because they suspect we're going to have some outstanding outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Well, do we want to back up and talk a little bit about your club and how
I think that'd be really great.
Because I know it's an interesting story.
Yeah, okay, so I started in 2016 here on campus. 90% of me want to go back to prison. 10% of me wanted something different. And my first day of class was my teacher's first day of teaching, Miss Lynn Becerra. And this woman has changed my life. She literally walked me over to ELPS, the LAP, all these program resources that I had no clue existed on this campus. But I felt out of place. All tattooed up, fresh out of prison, 13 years. Everybody was 18 years old. I was the oldest one in the class. Nobody wanted to sit next to me. So I asked her, where are the other parolees at? And, you know, bless her heart, she tried to find out, but the confidentiality, she couldn't. But she knew another gentleman who went through college, got his degree, and was working for parole at the time. And so we got 5 students together, and I knew 3 of them from prison. Didn't know they came here. And Yvonne Teniente told me, hey, Cheech, if you have a second meeting, you could form a club, and I'll give you $100. I was like, whoa, that's pretty crazy, you know? And so we had a second meeting, and we formed Biggie, Beyond Incarceration, Greater Education. And the club started off as a place for parolees to feel comfortable and feel belonged, because we felt out of place. And through the years, this is the 4th year in existence, we're up to about 35 members as of yesterday. It's just going strong. I believe that we really do need this program. I'm grateful for Rick to starting Beyond Barriers, you know, because as a student, I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I just wanted to feel welcome and accepted. And that's one thing that the club does. We have 2 former lifers who are in the club and are full-time students now. So far, we've had 2 individuals transfer to state universities, 2 former students who are now managers at Sober Livings here in Santa Maria, and one that has one graduate with his AA degree. Another member became a pastor here in Santa Maria. I graduated in May with my AS degree in automotive technology, but I don't even work on cars anymore. My career paths have changed. I'm now going to transfer out to a UC and go after my bachelor's, and from there I'm going to go after my doctorate.
Yeah. So, Cheech has just done an amazing job with his club, and had a lot of success through just that support mechanism here on campus. Every single individual in his club has above a 3.0 grade point average.
Wow.
There's a couple that have 4.0 grade point averages.
But that has a lot to do with what Rick's doing with us too, because he put it together to where now we can have people that are tutoring, and then we have people that, see, we reach out to them and we take them hand by hand to everywhere that they need to go. We show them all the resources and all that because of what Rick has done with his program, and then adding this component to it.
So recently, through our grants, we one component of the grant is University and Workforce Tours, and we recently took a tour down to the University of California, Santa Barbara, and they had just started a very similar group called Underground Scholars there, that's sort of modeled after the Berkeley model, and they went to UCSB and met individuals exactly like they are, formerly incarcerated students who are now working toward their doctorate. And do you want to talk a little bit about that tour and some of the insights that you gained there?
Well, it's just they had students there just like us, walk us through a lot of stuff that a lot of the stages that they're going through right now, and they pretty much told us, look, they have a program here called Promise Scholars, and this program has helped us immensely get everything we wanted. And if you guys want to do this, just come. We're here for you guys. We will help you step by step get everything you need in order for you guys to get your master's and your doctorate. It was great. Because like before, he was saying we went there before, or he went there before, but nobody reached out to formerly incarcerated students. So he kind of was like, I don't want to come here. But then this time when we went, I think there was like, what, 15 of us? 15 of the people that were there all want to go to that school now, just by hearing these other students that had been through what we've been through.
Yeah, most of the students on that tour commented that was the first time they'd ever been on a university campus. And a lot of them made comments that I didn't know it was even possible to get a doctorate in anything except medicine. And so then when they found out that it was possible to get a doctorate in sociology or psychology, they became really excited, and UCSB has a really great program so that students can earn a bachelor's degree there and then go directly into a PhD program. And the advantage of going directly into the PhD program, then they can get the assistantships that pays for their tuition and their housing and their a monthly stipend. And so once they found that out, they became very excited. And now we have several members of the grant program and the club who now have the goal of going on and earning a doctorate. And I just think that's a really outstanding
I've applied for it already. I'm just waiting to hear back from them.
Yeah, that's great. So, what do you foresee happening with these with these new grants and some of the things that are?
Yeah, well, one thing that through the grant we've developed a lot of community partners. We've developed partnerships with Community Solutions, which is actually a national organization, but they have an office here in Santa Maria. They do all of our criminogenic assessments, and that helps us determine the needs of the students. We do an intake for all of our students so that we sit down and we actually help go through and identify what kind of support services they need that we can meet here on campus. And then if we aren't able to meet all of those needs, then we reach out to some of our partners in the community that provide those services. Some of our partners are Goodwill Industries, Good Samaritan Shelter, D&J Sober Living, Haskell Builders. They have a program where they actually place formerly incarcerated students. They give them a job building trusses, and so they get work experience there. We're reaching out to other employers in the area that are willing to hire formerly incarcerated students. What we've learned, because our initial plan was to try to place these students in internships and part-time jobs in different industries around town, is they really feel like working on campus is the best option because they're right here and they're more connected. We follow up with all of our students in the grant program with either a phone call or a personal meeting every 2 weeks to make sure that they are on track if they have any needs that's coming up. But really, I think it's that kind of support mechanism that we've been able to develop through the grant program and through the Biggie Club that has really led to a lot of successes. Just let me, and I'm sorry to take so much of the time here, but when somebody is released from incarceration, 80% of them are going to be right back in there within 3 years. 80%. Now, if they get an associate degree, that number drops down to about 60%. If they go on and get a bachelor's degree, it drops to 40%. If they get a master's, it's only 5% will return. It costs $75,000 a year to house an inmate in California. So if you look at the return to society for offering students students coming out of incarceration a education, the return to society is really great.
Not to mention the lives that are changed.
And the lives that are changed. Our club members are just getting ready to, on April 3rd, to go to UCLA also to meet a similar group.
The one thing that's impressed me with the club when it first started, especially, was the connection that they made to the college. Not only did they start participating in Bulldog Bow Wow, the club actually started fundraising. They started giving back to the community. They were able to raise money to give games to the Boys and Girls Club, and they actually went and presented those games to the children. What is honestly really cool about it is that they have that connection, that support group from each one of us to help them out. I've seen Cheech grow from just somebody who was very intimidated from school to the utmost confidence in everything that he does now. Both Emmanuel and Cheech are both giving back to the community. They both have helped with food share even. I love their volunteerism, and I think getting all 35 members involved is going to be exciting.
Well, that's a great testimonial. I think we'll end with that. Thank you very much for the work that you guys are doing, and Rick, for you. I think this is incredible work. Very important stuff.
It's a great group to work with.
Thank you. Thank you.